The Rndr token has had a nice run up over the past month, about 45%, based on the hype for the Nvidia GTC conference, where Rndr CEO would basically be showing some of the biggest institutions in the world what the Rndr network has been doing in terms of AI. Now, we do finally have that presentation live, and in today's episode of the Everything Crypto Show, I'm going to break down all of the major news from this video, as well as the impact this may have on the Rndr token moving forward. Now, before we hop into the content, just a friendly reminder that I am not a financial advisor. I am simply here for your crypto news and entertainment purposes. And if you do enjoy the content, please consider hitting that sub and like button and turn that notification bell on so you can be notified when all of our latest videos go live on the channel. So we're going to get right into today's topic of discussion, and that is going to be about the Rndr token and also the Rndr network, as we did actually see the CEO, Jules Urbach, finally speak at the Nvidia GTC conference. That recording has gone live, and what I've gone ahead and done is watched the video and basically broken down all of the most important things and took in some screenshots to kind of walk you guys through my key takeaways from this presentation. And let me tell you, this was one that started off really impressive and just got more and more impressive as I continue to watch. And Jules Urbach does also dedicate a good chunk of time to specifically talking about the Rndr network and the Rndr token, its migration to Solana, the burn mint equilibrium, lots of cool stuff. So we're going to get into all of that. And before we actually do, though, I do want to address, I know a lot of people thought that this was going to be sort of like a sell the news event. I personally disagreed. I felt that this was going to be a really big opportunity to get a ton of institutional eyes on the Rndr network. And yeah, I mean, if you take a look at the chart here over the past month, this thing is up 44%. It did peak at about $13 and pull back from then. But this thing is holding steady even after the conference, which indicates to me that this was in fact not a sell the news event. And I do think that this will continue to be one of the best performers as we kind of make our way through this bull market. So the video really starts off with Jules Urbach basically showing that he has a decade plus experience of GPU rendering. And this is actually a screen capture from the 2013 Nvidia GTC event, in which they did announce Octane Rndr Cloud Edition. And, you know, here we have it again. They were at Nvidia GTC from 2013 all the way up to 2019. And then it was canceled in person, and now they are back, which which I would argue is probably the most important event for Nvidia and for the Rndr network yet. So he kind of breaks down the history of the Rndr network and how it started. So from initially being used to images, then moving into animations, moving into cinematic VFX, and then real-time rendering plus artificial intelligence. And he was really just describing here how they've basically transitioned from images and spatial content creation into real-time rendering and AI. But now we are entering a whole new era of AI that is basically in its exponential growth and demand phase. So looking towards 2030, they are looking at unlimited scenes rendering, AI plus neural rendering, which we will break down in just a couple of minutes, XR, Web3, and ambient GPUs, as well as 8D holographic displays. So to kind of preface this first part of the presentation, he gives the Star Trek comparison, how in the finale they walk out and it basically looks like a holodeck. And there is a clip from Jensen Huang, the CEO of Nvidia, basically talking about how spatial content should obey the laws of physics. And Jules Urbach says, as we are rebuilding the world of Star Trek, and that is a project we are doing for Paramount. So, you know, basically revealing that they are working with one of the biggest movie studios in the world in the form of Paramount. And here are some news articles that shows them teaming up with Lightfield Labs to basically make Star Trek's holodeck a reality. And they move into neural rendering and the AI use cases for this over the Rndr network. So Octane can create AI objects or nodes via self-rendering or from input photos. And some of the use cases this does have, the most interesting one is neural rendering for de-aging. So this was just a test. It didn't actually go live, but you can basically see here how much you can actually de-age somebody with the use of neural rendering through the Rndr network. And neural rendering is basically a method based on deep neural networks and physics engines, which can create novel images and video footage based on existing scenes. So It gives the user control over scene properties such as lighting, camera parameters, poses, geometry, shapes, and semantic structure. So with one image or with one scene, you can basically use this to create a ton of different novel images and video footage. And that's the big use case when it does come to neural rendering. And he kind of hops next into what they are looking to do with Stability.AI and Nvidia. This is their newest partnership with one of the biggest AI companies in the world. Stability is massive when it comes to the world of AI, and he does kind of flex that in a couple of slides, which I will show you guys. But here is Imad Mostak. I hope I didn't botch that, the founder of Stability.AI, who actually left his position as CEO after joining the Rndr network on the advisory board. He says, I joined the Rndr network advisory board to shape the future of decentralized computing and AI. My vision is to build next-gen, transparent, non-closed source AI models and leveraging the Rndr network's compute infrastructure to help ensure this doesn't become the domain and provenance of a few centralized players. And this is how big Stability.AI is in terms of the actual use. I believe this is for AI generated images, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, you can see here, like Stability.AI is the leader, even taking lead over OpenAI on this chart. And if we actually take a look at an infographic I did share on Twitter, it shows you that of basically of 15 billion AI images generated, Stability.AI had 12 billion of that. DALL-E 2, which is OpenAI's, had about just under 1 billion or just over 1 billion. Same thing with Adobe Firefly and Midjourney. They were all in the 1 billion range, while Stability.AI was over 12 billion. So a huge difference there. And they talk about a couple of different products here and use cases. Here is an AI node example for Stable Diffusion. You can see that is run on the Rndr network. And then they get into Octane Render. Now, the one thing I thought was really interesting here was the announcement of Octane GPT. So what this basically is a large language model for content creation. So, you know, basically asking for the structure of a code for a star field, pretty much helping people in content creation with automating through these large language models, similar to how ChatGPT can help with everyday tasks. And that's kind of the same deal. They talk about their backing of the Blender Development Fund, and then they get into the really interesting stuff as they do start to specifically discuss the Rndr network and the Rndr token. And this is the part of the presentation that I was most excited for. And yeah, I do think there was a lot of juicy information in here, especially for, you know, potentially institutions who have not yet heard of the Rndr network. So he basically starts off by talking about how the Rndr network is a decentralized marketplace for idle GPU compute power with crazy scalability and speed. And, you know, that does appear to be a big thing right now. The demand for AI is really exponential. It's just the big bottleneck is the supply, and that's what the Rndr network is looking to solve. So basically shows here, you know, a tweet. I've been using Rndr almost every other day, rendering my artwork on Otoy cloud rendering service. People don't understand how this is a game changer for an artist like myself. Someone asked, how is it a game changer? And he says, I can now work from a MacBook or something that is not strong enough to render, send it to cloud rendering, allow me to have access to my renders on cloud too, which is nice when traveling, and it's fairly cheap, especially for commercial work. And they do show off some of the work here they have done, you know, with some really big companies. Okay, so if we take a look, here is the Las Vegas Sphere projection mapping, and they're basically showing off some of the different clips here of the Las Vegas Sphere work that has been done using the Rndr network. I don't think all of these were done with the Rndr network, but it does have the capability of, you know, basically demonstrating stuff with the Sphere. They did case studies with NASA, the Montero Tour concert visuals, Pudgy Toys, PlayStation 5 marathon game, you know, just for some of the use cases of the actual Rndr network. So then he kind of moves into the 2023 year in review. He talks about the Rndr Foundation, which we can see here, advancing the next generation of rendering and AI technology, compute client expansion to AI. This is a big one that we've been focusing on the channel, is their transition from basically taking this idle GPU marketplace, the different nodes that they do have. And moving beyond just 3D rendering, they are now looking to help contribute this to AI as well. So large language models, AI inference and training, as well as fine tuning purposes. And they basically, what he says here is we've also leveraged the system now to bring in pretty much anybody who wants to build an AI decentralized compute service. They can do that on top of Rndr. So we started opening that up last year for large language models. Now there is 4 different compute clients on Rndr, 2 more coming in. And that is what Jules Urbach said. Basically, it's not word for word, but that is essentially what he said. And he kind of shows off the current compute clients here. So we have IO.net, large scale GPU aggregation and parallelization for next gen AI and ML workloads. Beam, orchestration and infrastructure management for simplified AI development and deployment. FedML, platform to build and commercialize AI applications easily, scalably, and economically. And then Nosana, DPIN for AI app creation and deployment supported by decentralized GPUs. So he shows off, he kind of gives their own slide to IO.net here and basically says how they are seeking, here's the GitHub, yeah. So Rndr Network's initial focus has basically been democratizing access and pushing the physical boundaries of this class of media. They have served users seeking a specific form of compute, GPU accelerated path tracing, image, and motion. So basically, this RNP was proposing an API for external clients to access Rndr Network compute. It's an alpha test case seeking to leverage the supply-side resources of the Rndr Network. In combination with this implementation, the Rndr Network aims to enable a decentralized, accelerated computing cloud offering. So that's a pretty big partnership right there. Then they talk about Beam Cloud as well as the second compute client to leverage Rndr Network's GPU supply for machine learning workloads. And they also talk about the transition to Solana, which I did think was interesting. He basically said they tried Ethereum, they tried the Polygon Layer 2, which proved to be slow and expensive and complicated. So he says, we moved to Solana and changed the entire model. And I think the model he's talking about is the burn mint equilibrium model. So creator pays in fiat or Rndr or a Rndr coupon, and this is then created to track a job. Dispute resolution if job is disapproved by creator, buy Rndr on the market matching the job price, and then burn 95%, pay software license fees and the foundation 5%, and then node operators rewarded for availability and completion with Rndr token. So actually moving over to Solana did really help them accelerate this burn mint equilibrium, which pretty much over time, burns do tend to be a pretty bullish narrative for tokens because there's less on the market to go around, which does make each existing token more valuable. So yeah, these burns are definitely good for most projects. I think the biggest example of that is BNB, but I do think that Rndr Network could really benefit from a similar narrative of the use cases, the burns. And so I am a big fan of them introducing that. Then he talks about how this is just the beginning as they are looking to continue spending into AI, spatial, and multi-render. So they do show off the Apple Vision Pro here. We know upon launch that there was an app that actually used Otoy services to create sort of like a Star Trek spatial rendering thing. So they show that off. And they talk about how, light field rendering is an order of magnitudes rendering increase. You need to have the GPU infrastructure, the GPU power to effectively make this happen, and that is what the Rndr Network is looking to solve with their set of nodes. Here's just basically a little bit of a screenshot of what it looks like there on the Rndr Network. And yeah, he basically wraps up the presentation on that note. So definitely showcasing a lot of what they have been doing so far and also what they are looking to continue doing moving forward, which I think is a lot more exciting for this token as they do really focus on, contributing that GPU power to AI use cases, which we know there is a massive demand for right now. And I do think that we are just in the very early phases of this, and the Rndr Network is really looking to capitalize on this big opportunity in the markets. So there you have it, guys. That was a majority of the presentation, the most important stuff that I found anyways. And honestly, overall, I do think it was a really good presentation. I wasn't expecting any groundbreaking news. I really thought that The big opportunity here would be for Jules Urbach to essentially show these institutions what he has been doing with the Rndr network at a time where basically the two hottest narratives in the market are AI and crypto, both of which Rndr does conveniently sit in the middle of. And I do think that he accomplished just that, kind of showcasing the evolution of the Rndr network over the years, the partnerships they have made along the way, and the massive partnerships they are currently making in AI. So I do remain bullish on Rndr. It is still my favorite AI altcoin here on the channel. And let me know what you think in the comments down below about the token, about the presentation. I hope you all enjoyed the content in today's video. I hope you are all staying happy, safe, and healthy, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Peace out for now.